Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 81. Buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades, y bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh podcast, episodio número 81. Welcome. My name is Karey Carbaugh, and this is the Karey Carbaugh podcast. For those of you who are joining me new, welcome in. For those of you who have watched these episodes before, welcome back. Before we get started, if you would, drop me a comment and let me know if you're watching this live or catching this on the replay by dropping the word live or replay or simply an L or an R in the comments. And smash that like button, like if you do. So, like if you do, and leave me a comment down below to let me know if you're watching this live or on the replay. Also, if you would, let me know where you're tuning in from. It helps me to know where this podcast is reaching, and it's very interesting for me to see how widely spread this podcast is becoming. So if you would do me that favor before we dive in, that would be great. If this is your first time, I want to explain that I am a person with low vision, and you'll see that as we go through tonight a little bit. I'm going to be reading some scriptures a little bit more tonight than I do sometimes. So if you see me staring down at my phone and not looking at the camera, that's why. I'm not trying to ignore you or anything like that. I'm simply reading from my phone. And also, let me explain that I'm a believer. I am a Christian. I don't force that belief on anyone, but I also don't hide it. And that will become fairly apparent in tonight's podcast more than in some. And I ask, if you're not a believer, that you would take from this what you will. Hopefully you can still find value in this message. And hopefully this will help with your self-esteem and your self-image in discovering some of what I'm going to share. My main purpose for these podcasts is to help people with their self-image and their self-esteem through scriptural references and through a relationship with God. So with that, let me dive in here. As you noticed from the description, if you caught that before coming in, that I've titled tonight's podcast, If God Already Knows, Why Does He Ask Us What We Want? And this question came to me a few weeks ago as I was helping with a vacation Bible school at church. One of the fourth graders in my class asked this question as I was having a conversation with them. And I thought about that a bit before I answered this young woman, and I've thought about it a fair bit since then, and I thought this would make a really good podcast topic. Because I think it's one that if we don't ask the question, many of us have maybe thought it. If you're a believer, we're taught that God knows everything, and I believe that's true. So why would He ask us what we want if He already knows? Why doesn't He just do it? Well, I think there's a few reasons, and let's dive in, and I'm going to read some of the scriptures to you, and then we'll discuss this a bit further. There's 3 specific instances that I found, and really 4. I'll mention the 4th one. It's a bit different. I think it still illustrates the point. But these 3 in particular, as Jesus is healing people of various ailments, I believe these 3 references really speak to this question. And so I'm trying to bring this up on my phone here. I thought I had it pulled up. Let me try something here. It wasn't pulling up the way I wanted it to. There we go. I'm going to read first the reference that came from, I believe it was this one that came from our Bible, our Vacation Bible School. It was one of these two. I believe it was this one. In Mark 10, verse 51, Mark chapter 10, verse 51, it says, he asks a blind man, quote, "What do you want me to do for you?" And this was as Jesus encountered a blind man on the road. He was drawn to this blind man and asks him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the obvious answer was the blind man wanted to see. And this was the passage, I believe, that prompted this question from this young woman. It was either this one or there's a similar one, and I don't know if these are the same instance or two different instances. They're very similar. In the book of Luke, chapter 18, verses 40 to 43, Jesus asked the blind man, "What do you want me? What do you want?" So it's a slightly different question. And the blind man responded. He replied, "I want to see." And then it says he was healed. And Jesus says, "Your faith has healed you." And so I believe this starts to answer the question a little bit. In both of these instances, the blind men, or man, since I'm not sure if it is really two different instances or maybe two different accounts of the same instance, it is their faith that has healed them. Jesus obviously performed the miracle, but it was through their faith that they became healed. And so this is one answer to the question, why does Jesus ask? Because it needs to be demonstrated through our faith. We need to put our faith in him to ask for what we want. Otherwise, if he just did it, it would be somewhat like a genie in a bottle, where he just grants us what we want, and that's that. He already knows what we want, and so life is perfect. There's no ailments, because none of us wants that. And God or Jesus just immediately grants the healing. That is certainly one answer to the question. Before I dive into some more discussion on this, let me read the third passage, which is a different instance, because and it comes from did I not write down the reference? Yes, it is. John chapter 5, verse 6, where Jesus encounters a paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda. This one I'll just kind of summarize for you. Jesus encounters the man, and the man is trying to get into the pool because it was believed that the pool had healing waters. And because the man has no one to help him get in the pool, he's laying on the side, waiting for someone to help him in. And when Jesus comes along, the man recognizes him, and Jesus asks him, "What do you want?" The man explains his dilemma that he's trying to get into the water, and at first he asks Jesus to help carry him to the water. But really what he wants is to be healed. And again, Jesus tells him that his faith has healed him. He tells him to pick up his mat and walk. This man has been paralyzed, the Bible says, for 37 years, I believe, 30 some years. And all of a sudden, he's able to walk. And it's not so much that Jesus granted his wish like a genie, again, but rather the man's faith in Jesus, his belief, is what healed him. So that's one answer to the question, why does God ask us what we want if he already knows? Because he wants us to demonstrate our faith in him. He wants us to put our faith in him. I believe there's a little, I think, deeper explanation of this. And if you're getting value from this, drop that word value or a V in the comments. I would appreciate that so that I can tell if this is resonating with people. If you can relate to any of this, if you've ever approached the throne with a question or a request, drop the word relate in the comments. Back to our topic here. I believe it can go even deeper. I think Jesus, first of all, he doesn't want to be a genie in a bottle that grants us wishes, but he also wants our participation in a relationship. He wants us to have a role in coming to him and asking what we want. Otherwise, he could have created us as puppets. He doesn't want puppets. He wants a relationship. For those of you who are parents, although I've never been a parent, but I can relate to this in other relationships, other friendships. If you know what your children want, but you ask them to tell you what they want, once again, I think this demonstrates that two-way relationship. Obviously, as a parent, there are things you provide because you know that the child needs it, things like food, shelter, clothing. But if your kid wants Nikes, then you want them to tell you that that's specifically what they want. Maybe you don't know whether they want Nikes or Adidas, but even if you do know, perhaps you ask them for that confirmation and for them to play a role in the relationship, perhaps with a spouse or a significant other, with a friend. I can relate to this a bit more because, again, I've never had children. I've worked with a lot of children. But if you have a friendship or a relationship with a spouse, again, you might know what they want for Christmas or what kind of flower they like. But maybe you ask them, what do you want? In order for them to have a part in the relationship. If you're going to dinner, perhaps you know that they like Mexican food, but maybe you still ask, where do you want to go eat? Partly because maybe they changed their mind that night and maybe they're not in the mood for Mexican food, but partly because that way it creates a two-way relationship. And I believe this is a piece of what God is looking for from us. He wants our faith to be put in him, but beyond that, he wants a relationship with us. He doesn't just want us to come to him when we need something. And again, he doesn't want to be a genie in a bottle or a super secret wish granter. He wants a relationship with us. Have you ever gone to God or your Creator, if you are not a Christian believer, and asked for something? If so, if you feel comfortable, drop that in the comments. And if not, I certainly can understand that. Perhaps just drop a yes if you don't want to share details. Or again, relate if you can relate to this. I know I've gone to God with questions. Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is not now. And sometimes we don't always understand why. Maybe later we can understand why a certain thing that we wanted wasn't granted at the time, but maybe it was granted later. Or maybe it was not granted and we can eventually understand why God saw in our best interest not to grant it, or to grant it in a different way than we desired. Once again, this is part of the relationship, part of the give and take. I see that we've got a few people commenting in here, so let me take a brief step back from our topic for a moment and respond to a couple of these comments and welcome a few people in here. If you'll allow me just a moment to find them here. Here we go. Sonia Dungy, thank you so much for catching this live. Welcome in. And a great evening to you as well. Welcome into the house from Strong Island. I'm glad you're getting value from this, Sonia. Thank you so much. Thank you for engaging and for letting me know you're here and getting value from this. I really, really do appreciate that. I appreciate your continued support of these podcasts. And I think that's everyone. I don't think I'm missing anyone. If I am, I will catch these afterward and will respond to any that I'm not catching now. But again, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me from Strong Island, Long Island, New York. I have a lot of friends in New York, and always appreciate seeing some of them jump in here. So thank you, Sonia. And a good evening to you. God bless you as well. With that, I believe I'm coming to a close here on our topic, so I do hope others of you have gotten value from this. I hope this helps with your self-esteem in knowing that you're not just a puppet, and God is not just a genie to grant wishes, but we can approach the throne and ask questions. Approach the throne of God. We are allowed to do that. And if that doesn't boost your self-esteem, I'm not sure I have anything more in terms of wisdom that can help tonight than knowing that we are allowed and that we can come to the throne of God and present our desires and our wishes at that throne. That is offered to each and every one of us. It's a free gift. All we have to do is accept it. And so I hope that helps with your self-esteem tonight, helps boost your self-worth for the week. And with that, I will bring this in for a landing. I think I see a couple more comments coming in here. Let me just make sure that there isn't anyone new joining us. And great to be here. It's great to have you, Sonia. We're going to have to talk here. I need to get you on one of these. I was on one of yours a few months ago, and need to get you on one of these because you've got some wisdom as well, my sister, that you can share with these folks. So we will talk about that offline and make that happen. Okay, with that, I hope you've gotten value. I won't take any more of your evening. I wish you a very blessed evening. I hope you have a blessed week until we come together again next week on the Karey Carbaugh podcast. My name is Karey Carbaugh, and hence the name of the podcast. So until next week, or if I pop in randomly at some time in the meantime, I don't plan to, but you never know. So until then, make it a blessed day, be a blessing to those you come in contact with, and do something positive this week for those around you. Until next time, have a great day, have a great evening, depending on when you're tuning in. Goodbye for now.